Hi all. So I'll be going through the topic, or I'll be giving a brief explanation about the topic monolithic versus microservice architecture. So first, let us understand what is a monolithic application. So, in simple words, every application starts as a monolithic application. So every application follows this architecture initially. So in a monolithic application, we'll have a single code base. So it is like a single unified unit. Here you can see, with the help of the diagram, we can understand. If you see here, single instance is having, suppose these are the various functionalities of our application. So customer service, product service, card service, all these functionalities have a single code base, a single instance, okay, a single code base, right? So it will have a single code base, it will have a single application or single instance and a single database. This is the general architecture of a monolithic application. So our application is also a also follows a monolithic architecture. So it is a traditional software development model which uses one code base to perform various business functions. And all these components in a monolithic system are interdependent. You see here, all these are interdependent. So if you make any change here, you need to release the entire to release this particular feature, you need to release the entire application. It's not that you can release this particular functionality without affecting the rest. No, it impacts the entire code base. So if there is an error in this functionalities, example customer service, it will affect the entire application. Okay, the entire application will be down if there is an error here. So all these functionalities are interdependent. Then it is time consuming, restrictive and time consuming to modify monolithic architecture, as small changes impact large areas of the code base. So just like I have explained now, even a small change will affect the entire application. So so therefore it is time consuming. Here we can see only 3 functionalities, right? Suppose our application has got 100 functionalities. So even a small change will affect the entire application. Even to deploy a small feature, a small update, what we need to do is we need to push it, or we can say we need to pull it and run few commands, and what happens is that it affects the entire application. So if there is an error in one of the functionalities, the entire application will be down. If there is a load, if there is a heavy load on a particular functionality, it will affect the entire application, right? So this is all about monolithic architecture. Now we can go through the advantages and disadvantages. Low complexity, easy to deploy. So like I said, monolithic architecture has got a very simple architecture, so it is less complex and easy to deploy. We just need to worry about one application, one database, one code base. So it is easy. Now moving on to the disadvantages. It is rigid, like I said. Even a small change affects the entire database. So it is rigid, it is not flexible, hard to scale. So if we have a large application, then it will be hard to scale, because we need another instance or another server, and entire code base, entire data has to be there in the second application server also, right? So it is not easy to scale, it is time consuming, it's hard to scale, it gives slow performance. Like we said, if we have just one application, if there is a heavy load on that application, definitely it will affect the performance. Single point of failure. So if we have just one application, if it goes down, that's it, we just have one single point of failure. So in our architecture, what we do in order to avoid this, we have a secondary application. So if there's if one application is down, still we'll have a secondary application, right? Then slow continuous development, like we said, Even all developers work on all these modules on a single code base, so development is slow. Now moving on to microservice architecture. So microservice architecture, what it does, it is a new technology. Initially, if we start our yes, every application is started with a monolithic architecture, right? Now why we can move on to microservice architecture is because what in this architecture the entire software or the entire application is split into, or you can say the entire application is made up of small independent components or services. So like we said, in our application, if we have 10 functionalities, we will have, for each functionality there will be a separate microservice, a separate database. So if there are 10 functionalities, we will have 10 microservices and 10 databases, right, for each application. So here in this diagram you can see, so this customer this functionality will have a separate microservice and a separate database. This one here will have a separate product, will have a separate microservice and separate database. So they are all independent of each other. So you can update, modify, deploy, scale each service independently. It won't affect the entire application. If one service is down, it won't affect the entire application, only that service will be down. So if you take Netflix as an example, Netflix also started as a monolithic application, but now they have migrated it to a microservice architecture, because as they wanted to increase the scalability, and also therefore Netflix is following microservice architecture. So if you see in Netflix, we have search, we have recommendations, right, we have streaming. So each service has a separate microservice and database. So if the search functionality is down, it won't affect the entire Netflix application. Only that search functionality will have issue or error, that's it. Okay, so this is one example. And so now moving on to the advantages. So they are loosely coupled, like we said, they are not rigid, it is flexible, loosely coupled. Each service each component works independently. So loosely coupled, flexible, independent development, independent deployment, mixed technologies stack. So these are the advantages which we have discussed. Okay. Now if you see the disadvantages, they are highly complex, debugging is not easy, automation is complex. Okay, automation has to be set properly, or else it won't work properly. It is highly complex because if we have hundreds of functionalities, then there will be 100 microservices, and it is very complex to manage the communication among all these microservices. So these are the disadvantages. So if you see use cases for microservice architecture, Netflix, Uber, these applications were started as monolithic applications, but then they migrated to microservice architecture. The key elements in a microservice architecture are: one, API gateway. So the client communicates with the entire application via API gateway. So there are many API gateways available. If you see, Netflix uses Zool as its API gateway. So similar APG, that's another API gateway which is commonly used. Okay. So this API gateway is the client accesses or communicates with the application through this API gateway. Each microservice has its own API, and the entire communication is done using API. Okay, next if you see service mesh. Service mesh is another element which helps in securing the communication among all these microservices. And third one, message broker. So the data communication among all these microservices is done using messages. So it is also another important element in a microservice architecture. For example, Kafka, which is used by Netflix. Okay, so message broker will have message queuing, and that is how and messages will be there in the queue. Microservice won't have to wait. It will send one message, it will be there in the queue, and then it can move on to its next work, so it doesn't have to wait. These message brokers will deliver the messages and give an update. Okay, so these are all key elements in a microservice. So with this I end this brief explanation of the topic monolithic versus microservice architecture. Thank you.